Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Jeneen with Candidly Single Mom podcast, and I am super excited to be in episode 3. I'm patting myself on the back, y'all, because guess what? I'm being consistent and coming on here and talking all things single parenthood journey. So if you have been following, of course, in episode 1, I talked about the reasons why I stopped podcasting and why I felt like I needed to pick it back up. And then I kind of started to go into the story of my marriage in episode 2 and talked very specifically about some of the things that occurred as a new mom. My son is 19 now, y'all. So this was over 19 years ago, just kind of navigating being a new mom, being a newlywed, and knowing like from the jump that this marriage was just not in the best interest of either one of us. And some of the situations specifically that I shared with you guys. So we're kind of continuing that journey. When I thought about coming on today, I can really talk about everything that happened, every indiscretion, all of the things, and give you all of those juicy details. But we will be here for a long time. That will be many, many episodes of me kind of talking about all of what I experienced in the marriage. But this is not really the point of why I'm coming on here. And, this is Candidly Single Mom. So we're talking about more of the single parenthood journey that I was on and have been on for 12 years. So I'm not going to go into a lot of the specific details as far as things in my marriage that were traumatic. I used that word before in a sense. And really, when I think back on it, it really was a lot of trauma I experienced. But I want to kind of get to the point of what it took for me to decide that marriage was no longer an option. Like what happened in this marriage and why. Okay, Jeneen, after the first year, when your husband didn't even stay and celebrate the first year anniversary, why did you stay? And why did you stay for an additional 8 years? And what did it take for you to decide that you're better to raise your kids on your own? So this is why we're here today, episode 3, talking about why divorce was something that I could no longer avoid. And again, circling back, thinking about where I was, my state of mind, I really felt like I wasn't confident as a person, was in my 20s. Married to somebody who was older, somebody who I guess you could say in ways I might have looked up to because of their age. And then honestly, it was my first serious relationship. Like I've never was in a serious relationship other than that with my ex-husband. And another thing that I felt was the justification as to why I was in the marriage for 8 years is because I was really considering like what scripturally evidence that I could find to kind of point me in the direction of where I could go. And when I think back on it, there were a lot of things that I kind of misaligned or misread or really applied it incorrectly to my life because I was thinking that I had to stay married, even though there was indiscretions. And I talked about it in the last episode, him cheating. And boy, we could talk about Papa being a Rolling Stone. Um, and that was the case over the 8 years. But I felt like I had to still be that wife because a believing wife saves her husband. I felt in some of those moments, as far as me trying to save the marriage, that I couldn't refuse my husband, right? So I would, be open to intimacy with him, but still having fear in the back of my mind as if I was going to get something from him because I knew that he was actually out there cheating. And that's real truth, real facts. But I felt like if I didn't, and you guys, you got to understand like 20, 25 to maybe 30, whatever the age range, if you do 25 plus 8, I was in that mindset that these are things that I had to do. This is what a believing wife had to do. And I didn't know how to protect myself mentally. I didn't know how to protect myself emotionally. I didn't know how to protect myself physically. I was afraid to be intimate with my husband at times, but felt like I had to. And had to because I felt like that was me saving my marriage. But, looking back on that, I tell you, if I could tell the young Jeneen girl after the first year, just go. But I wanted to also lean in on the fact that my son was young. He's a Black male, and the importance of having a father figure and him having a man and a male in the household. So all of these were reasons why I felt like, okay, I needed to give it another chance. I need to stay in the marriage. I need to make it work. We went to counseling, and we actually ended up moving back to South Carolina, but we went to counseling with my pastor, and, him kind of inserting these thoughts and beliefs in my mind of staying in the marriage. And, even talking to other people who either went through divorce or other people who thought divorce was an option for them, but they reconciled, and trying to figure out what in the world, what in the heck was I to do. But in the middle of all of that, right, trying to make it work, and we mutually kind of talking about, okay, we're going to make it work. He was still out there doing what he was doing. So I kind of think about, and, none of this, thinking that at this stage and at this age in my life, I can laugh at a lot of things, but it was almost as if, like in the movie Color Purple, Celie talking about Sophia. Sophia beat on her husband, and her husband beat on him some more. And in between the fighting, the babies kept coming. There was no physical abuse, but there was still that abuse that was going on. We were still fighting, but in between the fighting, like, we had our daughter. I was pregnant with her. And I remember he wasn't as excited about that because, that meant for him, maybe, and this is my assumption as far as what he was thinking, I never asked, that he was obligated to stay in the relationship. And I was like, because we were at a point to where I was like, this is not healthy. This is like really not healthy for me in my mind and my emotion to try to raise, a kid. And here I am pregnant with another. But I was so bent on making this family work. And I think a lot of it too was because I was considering what a prior generation did. So let's really talk about this. I'm Generation X. I really want to call myself a millennial, but I just missed the millennial cutoff. But I am a Generation X, and my parents are the baby boomers. And then, it goes ahead of that and ahead of that. And so when I'm talking about getting counsel from people, there are people that were older than me. And for some reason, I think that a lot of people, one, previous generations, they swept things under the rug. This me coming on here talking about what was going on in my marriage and all of this in like detail. And I'm not giving you like specific detail, but I am talking a lot about, the indiscretions. This would have been like a taboo. Like, you don't talk about abuse, emotional, you don't talk about physical abuse, you don't talk about rape and all of these things that happen. You just don't talk about it in a Black family. And that was generations prior. We swept everything under the rug. We kept our skeletons in the closet. What stays in the family, what happens in the family stays in the family. So you don't talk about these things. So if your husband was beating on you or abusing you, whatever extreme level, it was like you stayed in the marriage, you stayed in the abuse. This was just a known thing. And this is something that I've realized looking back at some relationships of people that maybe younger I admired, but then coming to light, seeing that there was abuse in that relationship, but the wife endured or the husband endured because, it really was till death do you part kind of thing. And so for me to just make that decision to say, okay, not me being emotionally low and in an abusive relationship emotionally, because my ex-husband would lie to the point to where he made it seem as if something was wrong with me. Me having the evidence of pictures, of videos, of emails. And guys, you know what I'm talking about when I talk about pictures and videos. Like, I see it in black and white or color or technicolor, however you want to call it. But for me to have actual proof and to have somebody continually kind of just speak and talk and tell you, you're wrong. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're seeing. Something must be wrong with you. And that was continual at a certain point in our marriage where I was thinking like something must really be wrong with me. But I got to a point to where I was strong enough to say, this is not going to work. And it took moving from the state of North Carolina, moving back to the state of South Carolina, situation where I had to rescue him out of going to jail or actually dying. We ain't going to talk about that. But I came to his rescue, me moving to Greenville, South Carolina, which was an hour away from family, which was an opportunity for me to kind of start fresh. And I was going to start fresh. We were separated. That was the third time with my kids. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. I could start fresh in a new city, but not being comfortable enough to kind of do it on my own. So I defaulted to him because he kind of found his way back in there, and him moving up after I moved. So it took so many cities, couple of states, the emotional mental abuse, physically, me having to go get medication because, I didn't want to refuse my husband, and kind of going through that whole process to understand that this marriage is so dysfunctional, that I am indeed not crazy with what I'm seeing, what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling, that I cannot do it anymore. And I think the biggest thing for me that kind of got me to that place was going to church. And I know some of you that are listening probably are like, maybe you don't go to church. Maybe you don't believe in God. Maybe you just don't have that faith system. And that's okay. There's no judgment here. But when I went to the church that was in Greenville, an hour away from family, I began to see like healthy marriages. I began to experience God in a fresh new way. I began to understand that my marriage, even though I thought that it was normal, I don't even know why I thought that was dysfunctional. I began to start have these realizations. It was almost as if I was wearing goggles or I had scales over my eyes, and the scales started to fall off. And I began to realize that this was not healthy. It was the same old stuff, but a different city, that things were just happening. It was just so unhealthy. There were points, and this is after I've had my daughter, where I would get up, and he wasn't working at the time, which, fine. But I would get up in the mornings. I would get my son and my daughter ready. My son would go to school. My daughter would go to daycare, get myself together to go to work. So I would get up, kids, myself, we go, leave the house. He's in the house. Get off of work, pick the kids up, come back home, cook, homework, get the kids ready for bed, and homeboy just sat there. Like it was almost as if he wanted to live this traditional role, but he was the housewife. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he was the housewife, but he wasn't doing any housewife duties. You know what I mean? Like he was doing nothing. And I was so fed up at that point, and I found my voice at that point, and I was like strong in my identity because, God was working on me and just kind of talking me through all of this stuff. And I said, this is it. I can't do this anymore. It is time for you to leave. And he packed his stuff up that day and left. As soon as he walked out of the door, I went into my room, sat on the floor, and I said, God, I don't know how in the world I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to raise my two kids in a city without family, without support. I don't know how I'm going to afford to live in this place with this one income, because he's not going to be providing. Because again, remember shooting back way years earlier when he left the first time, he left and did not help me pay the rent. And I told God, I said, you're going to have to step in. You are going to have to step in, and you're going to have to help me, and you're going to have to help my family. I don't know how I'm going to do this, and I can't do it without you. And that was my prayer. And I can tell you from that point on, my son being in kindergarten, my daughter being an actual baby or toddler, God has not stopped providing for me since. Flat footed, 10 toes down. Has there been difficulties? Yes. And we'll talk more about just the things that I had to navigate through as a single parent. But I got to the point where I was fed up, to where I just had to rely on God. Like, there's no way I can continue on in this dysfunction. And when I made that decision to kind of move forward as a single parent, that was when God kind of met me in a place that I've never experienced him in a way before. And this is not a testimony service, y'all, but I have to talk about it. I actually joined the choir at this church. And I remember crying every practice. We would actually pray before practice, and that was new to me because I sing on the choir at my home church. We've never really prayed like the way that they prayed at this church. Like he would go in, like going in. But I would cry when we go to practice. I would cry when he prayed. I would cry when we sang, for to practice. And then on that Sunday, I would cry in the risers when we were singing, but it was just a part of my healing process that I had to go through. And I can remember it would be me crying because I was crying out to God because I needed his assistance. And I remember there was a point where it kind of shifted. It wasn't me saying, I need you, and me crying about it, but it was like shifting. And I knew that there was healing taking place and growth happening because I started crying out to talk about how awesome he was and how good he is, because I had the proof of what he was doing in my life as a single parent at that stage with me and my kids. It was so amazing and so powerful. And, me just kind of dialing in and digging in. And every night I put my kids to bed, I would read the word, I would write and journal, I would cry, I would listen to worship music because I had nothing else to rely on. And I think that God had to remove, not only for me to be healthy, but to also remove like a distraction. Like, I hate to say it, but my husband was someone that I kind of put in a higher place than God. And even though, and I told you on in episode 2, when I talked about his thoughts on religion and his beliefs and things like that, how I felt like something grieving inside of me because he wasn't at the same faith level or beliefs as me, but I still exalted him. I was so bound that I didn't feel comfortable like going to the grocery store by myself, going out by myself. And heck, if I had my kids with me, like, how am I going to navigate these kids to a grocery store by myself? Or we went to a water park at one point and I was so nervous because I'm like, I don't know how to watch two kids at the same time at a water park as a single mom, because I'm used to my husband being there kind of in the area, in the vicinity, and me making him kind of do what he needs to do. And so I had to like relearn an independence in that stage when I told him to leave. And the other thing that I did, as soon as he walked out the door, not only did I pray, but I said, you know what? Because he was in the military, and that was one of the things I mentioned to you all that attracted me to him. But I decided I needed to go back to school because girl need to get these military benefits that you can get as a spouse, and I wasn't going to lose out on that. So I went back to school. So you can imagine, husband walks out the door, takes everything that he owns with him, his income, takes that with him, support, right? So he kind of was supporting me in a way, took that, and I decided to go back to school, these kids on my own, new in this area. It wasn't even a year that I was living in Greenville and didn't know nobody. So it was like, okay, Jenny, you can never get sick. You can never have a car accident. Like nothing bad could ever happen to you because who is your emergency contact? They're an hour away. And so I was so structured in how I did my day. I was structured like down to the hour, down to the minute of how I organized my day, and had to really kind of problem solve with my job. Getting a little ahead of myself. But I really wanted to talk about, maybe for some people that are out there, you might be in a situation where people are telling you, and it's not healthy for you. Emotionally and mentally and maybe even physically, you're in harm's way. um, One of the lessons that I learned when I decided that me going through a divorce or saying that this was it, that I can't take it anymore, was me realizing that I can't do what other people think is best for me, or I can't look at other people's lives and try to mirror their own. I had a lady, for instance, who went through her divorce and she was like, hey, this is what I did. I can't do what she did. My life is my own. And then I had somebody else, hey, I stayed in my marriage, or hey, this is what the word said. I had to really find out for myself that this is what I needed to do. And that meant that I had to kind of close out the advice from other people, or really be discerning on where their advice was coming from. Right. So when I say discerning, are they coming from a pure place? Or is there an alternative motive? Or are they kind of thinking back on their experience and they might have some PSTD? Is that right? PTSD. That's what it is, where they're kind of inserting their trauma into what you're experiencing. So they're giving you advice based off of a trauma response, right? I've had that happen. So I had to just be clear within myself to know that this is the path. This is what's right for me, even though people might not fully agree. And I've had people, family members, that did not agree. We'll get into that. And I made the decision. And one of the things that happened also after me making that decision was when and this church was amazing. Let's just say, like, those were some golden years, the church that I was going to. They had a defining your child's destiny class course. So single mom in church. Now I'm building community through church. So I'm not have to sing on the choir. I'm singing on the choir, getting to know myself, to put myself out there, to get to know other people. And I said, okay, let me go through this defining your child's destiny course, because now our destinies have shifted, because my children do not fully have their father present in their lives. It's no longer a 2-parent household. It's a 1-parent household. God, I prayed for you to cover us. You better step in as a father. Let me take this course and let's see what, you have to say. And I remember going through this course, and it was really like how to raise your children in a manner, in a way that's kingdom, and scriptures and things like that, to pray over your children, speak over your children, the disciplining. I mean, she was super amazing with everything that she had. But one of the things that I enjoyed was the ability to speak life over your children. And so even to this day, I have letters that I've written when I took this class. So when my children get older, they can read these letters. So it was like speaking into their life, prophetically speaking into their life. And so at the end of the course, we were to do that to our children, but they were going to be examples, the people that were teaching the class to us. And so one of the things that they did was to speak into me. And this is one of the things that happened to let me know I was on the right path, that me making this decision, because it was a very hard decision considering all of the things that were going on in the marriage. But the lady that was actually teaching the class, she looked at me and she said, you had a choice, and God would have honored, either whatever choice or decision that you would have made, God would have honored it. And that let me know, because I didn't want to disappoint God, you know, by being divorced. And at the age, being divorced, like, I was wearing it, not understanding it's just something I experienced. But I didn't want to dishonor God, because I was misconstruing scripture so much so that allowed me to stay in a marriage 8 years too long, 7 years too long. And so when she said that, that was so much freedom in it, because it let me know that God honored the decision for me to say, okay, Jeneen, this is not for you. And even if I would have stayed in the marriage and fought, I believe eventually, I would have hoped eventually things would have shifted and God would have honored that too. But there was just a way of escape for me that I saw and that I decided to go on. So that let me know that that was the right decision for me. Even though I didn't have a full picture of all that I would experience, of the hard moments that I would have raising my children on my own. And even now that my children are older, some things that I've come to realize about their experience, now that they can articulate it based on history, that there's have been some gaps. I still believe that that was the best decision and the right decision. And I'm grateful that God honored the fact that I made the decision that I thought was best for my family, and that I didn't fail him or that I didn't disappoint him. I had somebody say to me one time, and I can't even remember when it was, because I was very big in that time of my life, like just doing what God wanted me to do, and making sure that I was just an honorable child, one that he could be proud of. And somebody said this to me, and I don't even remember how long ago it was, but they said, God, they said that you don't disappoint God, Jeneen. You're not disappointing God. And again, it's just another freeing moment. But these were moments of healing, like the healing process. And believe me, like to this day, there's a healing process that I still go through as a result of things that I've experienced in my past. I will never say that it was a setback at this point now, but I can definitely say that I'm still healing through some things. So, with that being said, I want to kind of go into just some of the things that I've learned, and I kind of alluded to some of them. But one of the key things that I learned in the 8 years and the three times that we kind of separated, me going back together, in between the separation, the babies kept coming, type of thing, color purple situation, even though he was never physically abusive. Let's just say that, never physically abusive, more emotional than anything. But, I was at a point to where I felt like denial was safer than truth, but I had to face it in order to find my freedom. And then also, breaking doesn't mean failing. So sometimes walking away is the strongest choice. So the fact that breaking up a marriage, breaking up a family, being divorced, right, is a failure. And I alluded to that in episode 2, because all I wanted was to be married. I was married now, all I wanted to do. I don't know what's up with the color purple stuff, but anyway, but me being married was so important to me over career. And that not happening, like having a good marriage, was like a breaking for me, right? But I understood that walking away was the strongest choice for me. That made me who I am today, like strong. I might be a quiet person. If, there's people that do know me, and they probably would describe me as more quiet, but that doesn't equate to being weak. So just to say, me walking away and kind of deciding for myself what's best for my family, being that it was just going to be me and my kids, was the strongest choice that I've ever made. And then again, God's plan for me is bigger than the heartbreak that I experienced. I did get my apology from my ex-husband. He called me many, many years later. Kids are older, probably teenagers, preteens. And he said, Jeneen, I wasn't ready for you at that time, and I apologize. And I accepted his apology. I was looking for that apology. I was looking for that apology because dude put me through a lot, a lot, a lot. But when he gave it to me, I thought it was going to do so much more. But I had gone through such a process of healing at a certain point to where I accepted the apology, but I didn't necessarily need it anymore. Okay. That'll preach. But I say all of that to say that God's plan for you, single mom, for you, single dad, if you're going through this, even if you're not single and you're in this situation, or you're going through divorce, or you're going through heartbreak and heartache, even if you've never been married and you're kind of going through this cycle of him in your life or her in your life and no longer in the life, and then the babies keep coming, just know God's plan for you is bigger than the heartbreak. So if you have to experience a heartbreak in order to get into the plan that God has for you, just go ahead and jump. He's going to pick you up. You're not going to fall flat on your face. You'll be okay. Trust the journey of healing that you'll go on. But it is going to require that you lean in, that you lean into him, because that's what I did. Like, I leaned in, like all the way in, like going to church every day and night of the week in, and praying every night, because I had nothing else. And I had no one else. I had support, but it wasn't the support that I really needed. So God ended up being like the everything for me. And he should be, right? I believe that he should be. But I truly experienced that in my life where God was like everything for me. So I want you to understand that whatever situation you're in currently, even if you're a single parent now and it's hard and every day is hard and you're just so frustrated and you're just like, when will it get better? I am so tired. I'm frustrated. I'm tired of being everything for everybody and having little left for myself. Just lean into God. Trust the journey. It's going to get better. And so I always want to leave you guys with a Bible verse. And one is Psalms 34:18. And it says, Lord, the Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. So again, if you're alone on this journey, you feel like you're alone, you really are not. You're stronger than you know. Single mom, single dad, you're going to get through this. I am proof. I'm not at a place where I can say every day is easy, but I understand that every day is not going to be easy. Like, do you even have a right to even ask for easy days? But I know how to face the challenges and I know how to overcome them because, again, I went through such a process that has brought such resiliency in me, strength in me. Have me run any company, I'll be able to run it with my eyes closed because I'm running the company of Walker Incorporated, which is me and my two kids since they were toddlers, babies, to 19 and 16. And I think I've done a pretty darn good job. Patting myself on the back, even with the challenges to this day. So thank you so much for watching. I want to ask you, and I'm going to give you guys a call to action. Last episode, I asked if there's anybody that needed prayer, that just needed to put something out there and wanted me to just kind of cover you in any way. Feel free to do it. Message me on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok now, y'all, and YouTube, and follow, subscribe. I want to make sure that you all understand that you're not alone. For those that are listening that are not single parents, but you know somebody that could use some encouragement, and to see a person on the other side that has been or is going through, the same thing that that person's going through, share it. Please share, because again, it's all about creating community. And I think the biggest thing for me is that when I went through all that I went through, I didn't have like a strong community of single parents. Like, we were all struggling together. And I feel like that's something that we need. We need to have a strong community, and we need to understand the strength that we have and what we're able to accomplish and do as single parents. So again, can't say it enough. Please share, like, follow, subscribe, all of the things. But then my call to action for you guys today is to talk about, if you're in a place or if you've been through a similar journey where you went through a divorce or a breakup and you no longer mess with dude or mess with girl, female, you left them alone. What was your breaking point? What happened in your life that made you decide that you were better? It was better for you to take care of you, to bet on yourself, right? And what did that teach you? And so again, thank you so much for the time. Until the next episode, be well, everyone, and God bless.